So our focus today, we're really going to speak to Tebogo, who's our head of scripted at MultiChoice, and Pepsi, who was the executive producer, along with Thuli and Gugu, who was the head writing team and executive producer on The Wife, just to try and unpack how you get a novel from the page onto the screen, and even harder, how do you do it as successfully as this team has done? So welcome panel. I also just want to introduce you to Ed. We have a double act going today. I'm going to look at the more development stage of what the team did with the book and the script, and then Ed's going to look at production and more international point of view, because he's from C21 in London, just to have a look at the international angle of towards The Wife. So anyway, Tebogo, I want to start with you, man. Where did it all start? How did you end up and deciding that this is the one? This is what the audience needs now.
Good morning, everyone. So what people don't know is that this was years with MultiChoice. We shopped various iterations of it. It would have been a 13-parter, 216-parter, and we actually shopped it around with various producers and writers until just before COVID or after COVID, Stained Glass came through with their iteration of how they would adapt this book, and we were just blown away, and we just really jumped into it. But what people don't know is that it was probably 6 years, I stand to be corrected, 6 years of back and forth of trying to get what is the right way of adapting the literature onto screen. And Stained Glass came through along with Cold Stove and gave us this proposition, which is what led to what was called The Wife now. They conceptualized even the name because they had 3 books, and like from the name, everything just worked. The Wife and the concept that they came with. And that's when we jumped into development and started working on the successful show. So it was a labor of love and years to get the right kind of story to tell from the book.
Yeah. And then Gugu and Pepsi, if you can maybe just put your producer's hat on, where in the process were you roped in and you decided and knew this is the thing that you want to do, this is the book. How did that process come about?
I mean, it was a book that we were fans of first, so I think naturally for us this was something we could see all the ingredients in it of a super successful show. We specialize in melodrama, we specialize in kind of telenovela formats and Zulu content really, and it really had all the elements we knew that could make an incredible show. So when it came across, like the opportunity kind of came across, and as Tebogo was saying, it had gone through a few different producers, there was a few different presentations. We put our hats in the ring and said, I think we can do something, let's pitch something. We think this is a winner, not just for us, but it's something that we felt like could be a game changer in the industry.
And then Pepsi, from your end?
So I think just reiterating what Gugu said, I think we loved the book, so we relished the opportunity to put our take on it, and we found each other with MultiChoice, and for us that experience has built a capacity within our business where we are in the process and have done, we've gone out and acquired a lot more literature, we've gone out and acquired a lot more IP, because we really enjoyed that process, and we loved what it did for the platform, for ShowMax, what it did for us as a company, and that muscle in terms of developing and getting better and better at adaptations, and what it did for the author and for the South African publishing landscape, and what shows like The Wife can do for South African authors.
I think, Gugu, you said something, you said you knew this was going to be a winner. What was it in the book, those elements, that you knew would translate onto screen and would engage the audiences like The Wife did? What was that little fire, that spark that you knew this was a winner?
Zulu men.
Zulu men.
No, no.
What makes them so special?
Oh, we'll spend the whole day here. No, but honestly, it was Zulu men, it was a love story, it was loads of action. And I think it goes without saying when you're talking about adapting IP, it already had a following. You're not starting with something from scratch where you're convincing people this is something. It already had a built-in viewership that was going to come along and want to see, what did you do? Some of them to see, like, did you do it right? Some of them to just come along for the journey. So for all of those reasons, for us, it felt like a winner.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to return later to this concept of Zulu culture on screen, but I first want to, Tebogo, were you clear in your instruction to the team on target market? So for those who don't know, it's a book by Dudu Busani-Dube about eight men, a kind of crime family, 6, 7 men, but told through the eyes of their wives and their girlfriends and the ones who loves them. So this could be targeted at men, but it also could be targeted at a female audience. So Tebogo, did you and your team decide beforehand exactly where this narrative should hit? Which market?
Yeah, I think we had a strong sense of what the market is, along with Stained Glass and Thuli. They had done in their previous works a lot of middle and mass work, and predominantly for the Zulu speaking audience. And I think it's probably what gave them an edge in getting the adaptation that right, because the previous work Thuli and Stained Glass had done had very much spoken to the segment we were targeting here, right? We knew the women loved it. It had a cult following. I was the one who was saying, I don't understand in the writing room. Because when I was working on this, I was a CE, and it was myself, Flavia, and Mbali at that time. So I was still a CE at that level, and I said, I don't, and they said, the Zulu man, I don't understand. But we worked it and worked it into something that we knew what existing audience was there. But I think it exceeded our expectations, if we are being honest. We knew we were doing something good when we were in the room. It felt right, the energy was right, the stories were flowing. But we didn't foresee it would be this successful, if we are being honest amongst ourselves. I remember the first weekend, we were like, the whole weekend, it dropped on a Thursday.
Still trending.
And it was Monday, and we're like, they're still watching it. And as much as we knew we were doing something good, we didn't expect it to this extent. But I think, to answer you, it's research of us, the broadcaster, having known the market, and the production company with the head writer also having known this market. And we brought our different knowledge and perspective into making something concrete and entertaining.
Yeah. But I mean, now if we look at something like adulting, Tebogo, we know what adulting does, but The Wife actually was the initial one, you know, the one. Were you ever scared in the process that you think, oh my word, we're going too far, we're straying, this is too much? Or did you just completely believe in this team and went, yes?
I don't know, Thuli can tell you what we went through, but we had a saying in the writing room. We used to go, we're doing some ShowMax shit. ShowMax shit. It was kind of like our thing when we were in the writing room and we were doing the story. So we were having a lot of fun doing it. SVOD was a platform that had so much freedom and liberty, but I think Thuli can divulge more into the parameters of the writing.
I mean,
we had a lot of fun writing it.
Thuli, let's come to you. I mean, was there moments where you got scared and you thought, in the development period, and you thought, we're pushing too much here?
I mean, yeah, but like, not really. I think the truth is we had a really, in ShowMax in our CEs, Tebogo, Flavia, and we had a really supportive team that believed in us, believed in the work that we did. And so even when, and Tebogo often was like, bruh, I don't get it. Why are they so obsessed with these gents? It doesn't make sense. What's going on? But even then, like, there was always room for healthy debate back and forth. but there was also a lot of trust in us, which made us as the writing team feel like, okay, like how, and like we did at the beginning of the show, it was like, okay, this is ShowMax shit, guys. Like everything you dreamt of doing on a show, or like all of the kind of boundaries that are put, it felt like those were lifted and we were really given the license to just kind of blue sky it, and like what is the most dramatic way, the most interesting way to adapt and interpret the story and bring it to an existing audience and the new audience. And so, I mean, of course, you're always a little nervous, but there was no real fear. It was very supportive, and yeah, we were given real freedom, which was wonderful.
So, Gugu and Thuli, I now want to focus on, you have those 3 novels lying in front of you
Yes.
on the desk, and you need to start now. You need to churn out, I don't know if you knew 3 seasons, but let's go to that process. So, first of all, were you initially only focused on the first book, Hlomu The Wife? And then what was those main things, the high concept, the essence of those novels that you thought, okay, this is our North Star. This is where we should end up. This is the things we can't remove because it's the crux of the novel. Maybe the 2 of you. Go.
The
Yeah,
Zulu
it was
men.
daunting. I mean, it was, 3 very good novels, very different. I think we were part of the pitch, and then initially was how we'd sort of break it up and doing each season for each kind of book and relationship. But in terms of a North Star, I think we were very clear that it's Hlomu and Mqele. It's the love story. That's what's going to ground us. That's what's going to take us through each and every season. And even when we're dealing with the other wives, we also wanted to look at it in that light. We know Zulu men, we are known for, they're known for certain things, violence, this and that, but we wanted it to be romantic as well.
Do you see why I
We
didn't
wanted
understand?
people
Do you
to
see why I
fall
was always confused? I was like, but he hits her. They're like, you don't understand.
So our North Star really was just the romance and trying to find a love story we believed in, a couple that we thought, wow. Like whenever you look at Mqele, even when he's doing crazy stuff, you're just like, that's not you, that's not the real you. Like, you're a loving
You're
guy.
better than this.
You're better than this when he's, doing whatever, beating Hlomu, whatever. But he's still got such a strength and such a protective thing about him. It was one family, there's an allure with like, this many men all together who look after each other, who protect each other, who lost their parents and have this tragic story, but found in each other this like family and demographic, so, unity, sorry. So for us, it was that couple, it was love and it was action, and then it was showcasing the different couples across the seasons. Thuli, do you
And
wanna-
Thuli, for you, the essence?
Yeah, 100% the love story. That was it. And then the familial bond as well between these 8 brothers. Those were the things. I mean, when I read the book for the first time, I remember like, yeah, you're just devouring it. Firstly, it's so good, and you walk away, which is what we're like, well, what is the thing? And the love story, the brothers, for sure.
And then Pepsi, as executive producer, were you ever let in this process? At what stage were you given something to read? And what was your response?
So I don't sit in the writer's room. I don't enjoy it. And I've got great partners that do. I have to figure out how to make it. And typically, I think I brought it to the team and I said, well, let's look at this. Here's a great opportunity. I think what I think the audience would benefit from is they've got so Thuli and Gugu have got a really interesting philosophy in terms of, we don't get a perfect book. So when you get it, what are the things that they look for in a book that make it, because there's a lot that you change, and you change in the room and you build out, and a good book doesn't necessarily make a good TV series, but there's 3 or 4 things that they've developed as a bit of a philosophy in terms of what they look for when they think this is a great book to turn into a series, and they found those things in The Wife. So I think that's worth sharing.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly, that's my next question, because I just want to explore a little bit truthfulness to the source material. Where did you feel, and it's maybe Thuli and Gugu to you, where did you feel we should get rid of this? Maybe we combine two characters here. We need something here. We need extra characters. We need more plot.
Yeah.
Maybe just talk us through that process a little bit.
I think the guiding philosophy for us is that we are making two different products. We're not trying to make the book into a TV show. There was a book, it was great, it was celebrated. We're now making a TV show. And there's lots of things that can work in a book that aren't going to work in the visual medium of television. So we look at it as different products. We're not trying to force the book into this mold. We're creating a new mold that is going to serve a viewing audience who may not know the book, who may know the book, who may have had any kind of relationship with it or not. We are, and that's why, I mean, we kept harping on the inspired by, as opposed to based on or whatever, is that this has provided inspiration for a new product, which is a TV show. We don't want you looking at one and thinking it'll be just a translation of that onto screen. And I think for us, that tends to serve our audiences the best, is to try and not push the book into a format, but reimagine it completely in the best way that this format works.
Thuli?
Yeah. When we think about fidelity to the source material, I think what's important for us is the question you asked before, like, what is the essence of this? I think it would be, I mean, there'd be no point in adapting it, but it would also be really unfair if all of a sudden The Wife was like a sci-fi action, prison escape. It's like, wait, what? And so I think when you look at the essence of the source material, and then you understand, okay, different things work differently in different mediums, right? Books are a literary written medium, and television is a visual auditory medium, and so there are things you can do in a book. And The Wife is really beautifully written. It's kind of first-person internal monologue of Hlomu the entire way through. In TV, you can't have Hlomu say, and then I felt this and this, and then I thought this, what is a way that I can show the audience what is going on and so forth. And so, like you say, sometimes it doesn't serve to have, sometimes it's like, well, this aspect and this aspect will combine these characters. Sometimes it's like, this character actually doesn't serve us in this way, and this narrative thread actually works better over here if we join this. And of course, there's a lot of stuff you have to build out that doesn't exist in the book, because the book is just Hlomu's POV, but in a show, you can't sit with just one character, so you have to build out.
And you've got to create, structurally, you have to create cliffhangers and the book builds up to one climax, but suddenly you need to have 50
every week.
cliffhangers.
100%, 100%.
I think it's important for a lot of people who are trying to adapt literature into TV to understand they're fundamentally making a TV show. And the elements of television have to come into it. And that's why the inspired by becomes an important thing. We had written like ethoses that, okay, we can't change this, and that. Like we had our thing, we said this we don't change. And how do we work around it? But every choice we made was not to disregard the book, was to make a better TV show.
Yeah.
Because that's what we were selling. So when we made a decision, it was not of disrespect to the source material. It was purely done onto how do we support the TV show and make it the best.
It also freed the writing room space quite a lot, because you weren't sitting with writers thinking like, okay, but this doesn't make sense in the book, When you say, okay, we're being inspired by the book, but everything is on the table.
Yeah.
Like these characters can go on any journey, any event can happen, whether it was there or it wasn't, as long as it keeps that essence. And what we got from the story was family, love, and action. Like if it serves that, there's nothing that's on or off the table. And of course, there'd be certain moments where what we come up with in the book, in the room, is directly mirrored by what happens in the book, and then that becomes a really great nugget for the audience to be like, oh shit, yeah, I remember that moment. And so what are those moments that you keep building towards as well? Even if the book sort of builds like this, there's different threads and there's different stories that you can then structure in a way that you do have a cliffhanger each episode. And a lot of them came from the book and came from events that happened there. It was just about how you then put them together to make sense in this medium.
Were you a visual writing room? I mean, was there a whiteboard and everything is
Always.
sketched
Always.
out?
Timelines. Yeah. It looked like a murder investigation, you know, with all the things.
It is really cool because you'll have like your flag post, like Mandisa burns the money, or whoever, and it's like a puzzle. Like, how do we get
Get
from
there
here to
to
there?
there.
Yeah.
And like, how do we make it interesting? How do we make it compelling? How do we keep going? And it is really amazing when it comes together. And then you solve it. And then you give it to the CEs and they say, it makes no sense. And you go back again. And then it's even
Damn
better the second
CEs.
time.
Listen, maybe a slightly, oh, sorry, Tebogo.
No, go.
Maybe a slightly harder question, but working with the author, where did she come in? Was it easy? Was it hard? Did she have a say? It's a relationship that can go wrong very easily. I've seen it many times happen. Often you need to bring in legal to make a clear line of what can and what can't. So what you can share and what you're willing to share, maybe take us through the collaboration with the author.
So I think I'll take that, and I'll try and be as delicate as possible. It is very difficult when you've created something. Authors spend years writing a book, falling in love with these characters. They have very clear ideas of what those characters would and wouldn't do. When you kind of hand your work over to other people and it's now being created as something new for a different medium inspired by what you've done, you have to let that go. And authors struggle with that a lot. So you have to, we ensured it was built in from the beginning, that it doesn't work to have authors have approval, to have authors have, you want to be respectful, and I think sometimes they do come with cool ideas and input, but it must be as an additive to the process, but not as an approver, not as, it's tricky. So you need to, when you do the deal, you need to know that you're letting go of your baby and somebody else is going to raise it, and you might not like what it looks like, but it'll work. You have to trust that it'll work for what it's being created for. So it is a tricky, but I don't believe in involving and keeping authors involved through the process.
Yeah. Anybody want to add anything? All good?
Yeah,
Happy?
that's
Stop,
great.
full stop. Okay, last question before I...
No.
Tebogo, anything?
No, just that it's an international trade. If lot of in Hollywood, a lot of authors stay away from the screenplay for that reason. They're too emotionally invested to get it. Just doesn't work. It's not because of malice or whatever. That's why a lot of them stay away from the screenplay and are brought in on advisory roles. So it's an international kind of norm to have that happen.
Even on a smaller level, like always in the writing room, we always say, like, once you've delivered your script, your job is done, right? Yours is a writing medium. The production's going to take that and they're going to make. Sometimes writers come into the room and they're like, oh, but we didn't do that, and then they changed this, and then when they see it on TV, you know. And so just accepting, like, once you hand it over, it belongs to someone else now, and they'll do what they see fit.
Yeah. Second last question from me before I pass over to Ed, and he looks more at the production side. Respect for the Zulu culture and the sensitivities around pride, that is a Zulu person that looks at this can still be proud of this, see their culture, see themselves represented in a way that's positive and interesting and contemporary and real. How did you navigate around that and to make sure that your culture doesn't get stripped or portrayed as just one thing, and especially the Zulu men portrayal? I mean, Thuli, Gugu. Thuli, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, no problem. I'll be short. I think for me, it was kind of intrinsic. I am Zulu, and so I think in the work that we do, we always seek, regardless of the culture or characters we're portraying, we always seek to portray characters that are 3D, to deal with, I mean, really our whole jam is kind of like just uplifting black people, you know, and wanting to portray them in a way that we know them to be because we are them and we live amongst them and all of that. And so it didn't feel like it was, hey guys, agenda item, we've got to make sure that we're respectful. That's kind of the ethos and the way in which we move. I don't know if you have anything
I'm going to
add.
say the same thing, maybe a bit more basically and not as eloquently, but just by being Zulu, frankly. And I think like sometimes we shy away from stuff like that, but probably the reason that we gave a presentation that resonated more with you guys was because we're from that culture. Probably, and I believe it with everything. I don't believe, you know, I don't believe as a white, as a black Zulu woman, I should be telling white male stories. Like, what do I know? What am I going to bring there that a white male isn't going to bring better? So I think, like, there's nothing wrong in celebrating who you are and that being the basis from which you come with your nuance, you come with your respect, because that's your culture, that's what you grew up with. And I think it's important to have women telling women's stories. I think it's important to have black people telling black stories. I think it's important to have Zulu people telling Zulu stories. And I think exactly what Thuli says, then it doesn't just become this tick box, but it's an inherent thing that audiences audiences know. You can't fool an audience. I know we sometimes, especially in this country, we think our audiences, especially our mass audiences and whoever we produce for, we think they aren't intelligent. And it's very wrong. They absolutely are, and they can sense that. They can tell when something is coming from a real place and when it's not, and when it's put on, or when, you know, it's coming from something else. So I wish I could say something more
No, it makes absolute
academic,
sense.
but being Zulu is what allowed us to respect the Zulu culture.
Absolute sense, yeah. Final question, maybe to just all four of you, for the development process. What was the greatest challenge? What was the thing that you thought was going to be easy and it actually turned out to be the hardest thing to do? Tebogo, maybe start with you.
Look, I think it was a first for a lot of us on the panel in the room, right? And the hardest thing was kind of mapping out what do we do, what do we keep, what do we not change. There's a lot of crafting that went into it. And I didn't answer the question of what we were scared about. We were inherently scared about making something that the audiences don't like and resonate. But at the time, we loved what we had on paper, but our fear was, are they going to say it translated? So we added a lot of new characters that didn't exist in the book but served the purpose. We changed characters. We killed characters that didn't die in the book, but that served purpose for the story. So that was the hardest thing. I mean, for me internally, saying how far do we pull away from it and how far do you stay? But it was a lot of learning, so that was fun for me personally. On a personal level, it was a lot of new things I was doing. And the fun of it being the first one we were doing kind of carried away, and probably nostalgia is a thing, maybe master trauma of what was there, because we had that fun doing it. So I can't really pinpoint it now. I think the trauma has healed. I don't know.
I'm glad it has for you, mate.
Are you still traumatized?
No. Yeah, I am. But
The denial first.
I think the hardest thing for me, and I think Gugu and Thuli will it was because it was the first one, because the stakes were so high, because it was received so well beyond any of our expectations at the beginning. It created this kind of pressure cooker. So managing the different, and passionate author, passionate client, passionate team, passionate audience, it was a bit of a thing to try and sort of keep us all kind of moving in the same direction, and all focused on what it is we were trying to achieve. Yeah.
It was almost like an anyway of its own success, right? Because if it had bombed, we actually would have been fine if there was a season 2 or 3. And I must say that like season 1 was some of the most magical collaboration time we ever had, to be honest. Like I really have to shout out Flavia Mbale and Tebogo. They were our CEs at the time. The room was magic. Like the energy was good. They trusted us implicitly, we trusted them implicitly. We would write stuff, we'd give it to them, they'd give us notes. Every note they gave us made the show 10 times better. Like there was nothing but we were just like, oh my gosh. Like it was such a great collaboration. The energy in that room was amazing. Like honestly, the fun that people had watching it, we first had in the writing room together. And so it almost felt like the more successful it got, the more people started coming into that mix and having opinions and taking over and, no, we think this. We're like, guys, season 1 was a success. Just let us do it again, the way we did season 1, you know? So it was hard, but it was almost the success of it made so many more people invested and so many more people wanting to come and have a say and make sure that season 2 does the same or even better, and season 3. So that was hard for me. Still in therapy.
I think
Literally.
that's a whole topic on its own that should probably be engaged. The difficulties of following up a successful show.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting topic. There's a lot of expectations that come with making season 2s of a successful show that both broadcaster and producer have to go through. That is not spoken about a lot. But there is a lot of pressure following up very successful shows. And you almost have to remind yourself what you've done at the first place when doing a follow-up of a successful show.
And then finally, Thuli, your biggest
Yeah.
challenge.
Double click on all of that, and then also cliffs at every 3 episodes. Because writing for a telenovela, you're cliffing every Friday, every 5 eps. So cliffing every 3 eps, it was a lot of fun, but it was a big challenge as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Ed, I'm going to pass over to you now and maybe focus a little bit more on production.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Vickers. The theme that is emerging from all of this, I think, is whenever I speak to writers that adapt literary works, successful literary works, is the pros and the cons of having a successful literary work to turn into a TV show. Obviously, the pros we've touched on, the cons we've touched on, and a point about the authors in LA, oftentimes they're banned from the set because nobody wants those guys around. You know, telling them what they should be doing and what the character would actually do at this point. You know, nobody wants that guy. And I'm interested in some of the other pros and the cons of adapting such a well-known literary work. I mean, I'm going to ask Tebogo, just in the pitch when this show came about, before we get into some production details, how did it reduce risk to you, knowing that it was based on such a well-received literary work? Because it's all about risk, right?
So the assumption of a reduction of risk, I think, is almost a fallacy and a spot where you can fall into without seeing yourself, right? So we knew as much as it had a following, that actually created more expectation than actually adapting literature that people was not as popular as this book is. This book had Facebook pages with millions of followers that commented on it religiously years after the book had been published. So that actually didn't reduce risk. It actually created it. So popularity doesn't reduce risk of literature. It's a fallacy to assume that. It had an available audience, which can be a good thing or a bad thing, because if you make a bad show, you have all this available audience to hate your bad show and spread the hate much quicker and the dismay quicker instead of that. So it doesn't, I feel it's a fallacy that it reduces risk. We are in development with a lot of lesser published books than The Wife was, and I think it's Hlomu was. And I think it's gonna make the process a bit easier for the development guys. But we still feel there's very compelling narratives that are gonna come from these lesser popular books because the narratives in there are so strong. So I don't think it reduces risk at all.
And how important was it for you to define the demographic that you wanted this show to hit? Because obviously the fans of the book is quite a small demographic. Yeah. You wanted it to broaden it out, and this is going to come in with the actual, the process of the production as well. How did you make sure that the expectations and the demographic touch points were beyond that of the novel?
Yeah, and that was what we thought of, right? We knew there were a lot of males that had not read the book, right? And we're like, what are the males coming in for? What is it in it for them? right? And it was the action, it was the brothers, it was the heist. Because when they're watching television, so it was saying, we know the people who read it, but what's the male gaze for it? And the benefit we had is that Hlomu speaks about her experience of the brothers. The brothers never speak about themselves. So the show gave us this perspective for you guys to actually hear what the brothers say, do, or feel, because you always saw them from her point of view. So that allowed us to bring in a lot and develop these brothers, which I think we've done incredibly well, that engaged. And that created a lot of debate, because people are like, in there, they're like, no, this one wouldn't be like this, no, that wouldn't. But that was, so we expanded that part. But we already kind of knew, because like we cater for the market on a daily, and that's what we added in to say the book doesn't have this, let's add this so that it appeals to our wider base of television.
And the sort of same question to the rest of the panel, really, the pros and cons of having such an important work to adapt. We've touched on a lot of them. We touched on audience expectation. Did you have any sort of negative feedback?
Oh, of course. Every Thursday morning at 5 a.m. No, there was a 5 a.m. club that used to watch as it came out, and then they'd start commenting. But not as the show went on. In the first week, and I think what for me was the biggest challenge we were going to face, was how do we cast the show and what does it look like in a way that can take millions of individual imaginations that have read and imagined their own Mqele, their own Hlomu, their own whatever, and unify it and create something that is big enough and powerful enough that you can abandon that enough to sort of suspend, disbelief and go with the show and listen. So in the beginning, there was a lot of like, is that my Mqele? Nah, I didn't see her like that. But there was also a lot of people that were like, ooh, that's a Mqele I could get behind. That's a da-da-da-da-da. And I think for us, when we were casting and when we were creating the sort of visual treatment of the show, that was crucially important, is how do we overcome millions of individual imaginations and give them something to rally behind together?
Yeah. And Thuli, your take on that question?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think a lot has been covered already, and so I feel like I'd just be repeating myself. But I did love that there was an existing audience, and it was very interesting. The existing audience was in the writing room with us. They weren't a very big, you can't overstate it in the writing room, but we always did have in mind the fans of the books. We were always very cognizant that we wanted to we knew it wasn't going to be a word-for-word, scene-for-scene translation, but we wanted to make a show that felt like it was us, that was exciting, compelling, but that also any fan of the book could watch and go like, sure, it might not be exactly what I would have done, but this is a good representation, and so we wanted them to be satisfied in that way. And I think it helped that we were also fans of the book. And yeah.
I think I just want to add, so I think if an available audience or an existing audience is great. And I think if you do a good enough job, even if people they find it jarring at first, if it's a great show and a great story and you've done a good job with it, they'll come along.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's ever a bad thing. I think you just have to do a good enough job of and make a great show that book fans may find it jarring at the beginning, but like any great drama, if it's a great show, they'll come along. Yeah.
Pepsi, before I ask the floor for any questions, I was just wondering, one of the themes that has popped up in this conference at MIP Africa is the idea of producing something locally that then can work internationally. How did the potential for something to go international factor into the creative and commercial process?
So we've all got differing views on that. So I'll let everyone just kind of give their view, but I'm a little bit torn at the moment. I'm not sure whether we need to be designing stuff for an international audience. I haven't seen anything come out of South Africa that's designed for an international audience and blow the lights out. So I swing. Depends on what day you ask me. Some days I'm like, we need to kind of craft it for a global audience, bro. Other days I'm like, let's just tell a bloody good story, be true to who we are, and it'll travel. So today's Wednesday. I think we should be true to who we are, and it'll travel.
Tomorrow will be a different story.
Tomorrow will be a different
Right brain, left brain.
Exactly.
So, yeah, just to confirm as a broadcaster for those who ask, that is our stance. We make something for SA that should travel internationally. And by the way, yeah, the wife has sold outside the country, in East European territories. I asked them to send me the sales report. Those countries, some names I can't pronounce. And I'm not. Oh, is my mic dead?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's sold in some countries I can't announce, but it traveled, and it traveled originally how it was. So make it for home. If it's good, it will travel. Don't. That's our philosophy as a broadcaster for Middle and Mass.
I'm with Debs as well. I think the reason that things that are designed, so things that we like, that we consume that are international, are not designed for us. They tell their stories, they know their local contents, and actually the more specific the sort of topic, subculture, like whatever is, the better it tends to do. So that's the model that I've seen work, and that's what I would always do, is like, the more you wanted to travel, the more specifically South African and African and Black and Zulu and whatever it should be. Yeah. And again, like how do I think, what will the internationals like? The only way I can answer that question is if I myself was an international. Unfortunately, I'm not. So I have no way of even answering that question if it was one that I wanted to ask. But I can tell you what a Black Zulu girl would like to watch and what that looks like, and I can make that.
But MultiChoice Studios is the distributor, right? Did they come on board and make notes on scripts to try and make it more international?
Sorry, no, our distribution company, MultiChoice, does not get involved in creative. Creative is left exclusively to the content hub and the producers to develop the content. Our distribution does not influence our content and inkling.
Anyone from the floor got any questions for our panel? There's an arm that went up really quickly right there. Let's see if we can get a microphone to that lady. Do you want to tell us who you are, please?
Hi, my name is Nana Bulabula. I'm a screenwriter, an actress, and director. I have a question for you guys, all of you actually, and a second one, but I'll start with the important one, which will go directly to Pepsi. My first question over here is, what did you do, or what did you guys do in order for you to convince the writer, if you can share, to let go of her baby? Second question, before I sit down, from each and every one of you, what was your favorite nugget from the book? Yeah.
Okay, so should I take the first one, because I think that was directed at me. Debs, because I don't know how far along we were in terms of the engagements with the author, but we got involved. When we got involved, there wasn't a deal yet with ShowMax, between the author and ShowMax. There was kind of the beginnings of a deal, if I remember.
Yeah,
it hadn't been tied up yet, so we had to work together to convince the author that we would do a good job. We shared what our take would be, and the difficult part of the conversation was but do you understand what this means? It means you got to let it go. But I mean, that happened.
It wasn't as hard as you think, because I think the proposition was exciting, right? That was presented. So the offer didn't have that much convincing that was required to happen. I think the difference becomes when the work starts happening. I don't think there's an author who isn't excited of the idea of the literature being turned into a television show. Yeah. So that usually gets people exciting. I think the devil becomes when it's in the detail. Like you heard Ed said, in LA they sometimes ban them from the sets because of that. So, but the idea of a show getting made by an author, who wouldn't want that?
It's also really commercially really good for authors. So you make a lot of money as an author from, and I think it's an important consideration. you do. You do well, which is why I'm particularly passionate about adapting South African or African literature, because it's just this whole amazing new income stream for our authors that is significant.
It
And
also
now
brings
it's
a new
really
audience
easy. 'Cause
And
we
it
just
brings a
say,
new audience, yes.
to your books.
we made The Wife. And then it's a much easier conversation now than even it was then. And then it wasn't even that hard. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Zandile, a Zulu man.
Say it again for the people in the back.
Yeah, I'm a Zulu man. So, no, thanks for the good work and the sharing of lessons. My question is around, was there any correlation or impact on the sales of the book after the wife
Oh, definitely.
story? And if yes, how much?
Definitely. Dudu has the rights to that book, but the book took off naturally. It introduced a lot of, as much as it had a big fan base, it also introduced a lot of other people to the book who said, oh, what's this show about? And they went and got the book. It was nice to see on my end, because the books had been out for long, like I was telling people, that they had a kind of like second rebirth of the books, which was wonderful for the author, I believe, that it brought in a lot of new. I don't know those numbers because we don't own the publishing rights for the books, but there was definitely an uptake.
And you saw at that time, even in exclusive books, places like that, they started putting them back on display as like the centerpieces of the store displays. And she also released subsequent books around that time, which also helped, even though it wasn't one of the 3 books, because there was talkability and people were aware of her a lot more. Then those books also
There were
did
2,
quite
ne?
well. Yeah.
Yeah, two
did
got
the third.
released while we were on air with The Wives. I think the author released 2 more literatures from that. So I think there was a positive take for her there.
I think a definitive thing that we can look at is it did make it back onto the exclusive books top 10.
Yeah.
And it hadn't been on for a while. So when the series was on, it made it back and it became a top seller again. So as much as we don't know the data, it did certainly kind of make it back onto the top 10 most sold books list.
We're into the last couple of minutes. I think I just wanted one last question to Pepsi. The impact of the sort of increased demand for adaptation rights to literary works, because of the growth of local production and the demand for those rights, is the price presumably going up for literary rights?
Yeah. I'm like, come on, your book's not that good. The numbers have gone up. And I'll tell you, a big challenge is reading all these books. It's a problem that we have now. So we've built systems and processes and sources. So we're getting a lot of books, a lot of material. Our biggest challenge is not access to material. It's just going through all of it. So there's like Audible, there's we've always got headphones on and we're reading books, and it's the capacity to read everything and decide what you want to take further is our biggest challenge.
Get AI to do that.
No, one more. She has a question, but I just want to add before you close. Please do not fall into the trap. Do not all go and buy books. That is not definitely the only strategy podcasters are looking at. Please don't all go and buy books and then call us and say, I've got a book, please, some belief.
I think we have run out of time. Maybe that question can be after the session, but all that remains for me is to thank the distinguished panel, to thank the co-moderator Vikas, and to thank you for coming and for your questions. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.